What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here with me, Sean Sheehan, on Sherdog.com. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined once again by the Cage Warriors play-by-play commentator, Brad Wharton, as we preview Cage Warriors 175, which goes down in the BEC Arena in Manchester, England on July 25th. This is the night before the big UFC card, Brad, is it? I'm sure you're looking forward to the absolute insanity of that weekend there. You're only a few days out now.
Yeah, but so we're actually on the Thursday.
Right.
So we're on straight after the UFC press conference. So then Friday, obviously we're going to have like the ceremonial weigh-ins and everything, and then Saturday night's the big UFC card. It's going to be quite the weekend for MMA in Manchester. And I think if you look at this UFC 304 card and the number of people who've come off Cage Warriors into the UFC, it's kind of insane. So like, why wouldn't you want your Thursday night go and see the next lot? I think you can get a ticket for less than 40 quid to go and see, the next group of guys who you're going to be paying about 10 times that to go and see in the UFC in a couple of years.
It's funny. I actually think Thursday's a good, I don't know if this was why the decision was made, but the fact that the UFC card's on in the middle of the night, isn't that correct? Like if you were to go on a Friday and you're kind of, you're staying up until like midnight, 1 o'clock on the Friday, you're probably better off doing that on the Thursday, sleeping in on the Friday. Maybe I know you have to probably take a few days off work to do this, but stay up late the Friday night, acclimate as someone who's done this many times every week, basically. You're probably better off doing that. And like this kind of turns into a bit of an international fight week as well, doesn't it? Press conference, Cage Warriors, weigh-ins, UFC. Sounds like a fucking good time for me, although I can't imagine anything worse in life than being in the middle of Manchester at 7 a.m. with a bunch of drunken louts coming out after a lot of fights. Yeah, are you going to the UFC? Or are you going to?
I'm not actually going to the UFC. I am old and tired.
Me too.
And
me too.
We've got 2 Cage Warriors events in the space of 5 days. I am going to spend Friday in Manchester. I'm going to go to the Science Industry Museum. I'm going to have a load of beers. I'm going to get a train back, and I'm going to watch the UFC from the comfort of my own home, because I do need to be in the office on Monday morning.
Yeah.
Got more work to do, so I am going to swerve it live this time. I think more to the fact that obviously we're going to be in Manchester from like Monday, Tuesday, and I'd have to get a hotel Friday, Saturday. And then you go back to your hotel at 7 a.m. and then have to leave at 12. It's just be an absolute nightmare. So I am going to swerve this one, but I shall certainly be watching it.
I know a good few lads from Ireland who are getting the plane out to Manchester, like the 7 p.m. flight, I think it is, from Dublin. And are getting like the 10 a.m. flight back, no hotel, just going straight to the arena, straight to the airport and back, which is actually really handy, I suppose. It works out pretty well. So good week.
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have all my stuff with me, that would be an option. Just not getting a hotel on the Saturday. But obviously, I'm going to have a week's worth of suitcase and suit bags and laptop bags and everything. So yeah, just a bit hectic for me. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the card. And like I say, like the number of Cage Warriors vets on it. I think if you're in Manchester, you'd be mad not to drop 40 quid on a Cage Warriors ticket and come see some of the talent that'll be coming through.
100%. Let's go straight to the main event. So the middleweight title is on the line, and look, if anyone has tuned into Cage Warriors over the last decade, you'll have seen some of the talent that's been in this middleweight division. Now, the middleweight division worldwide, I suppose, isn't massively strong, even in the UFC and at the very, very top. But like Christian Leroy Duncan, obviously doing good things in the UFC, and many more besides. Like Matthias Frederick had a great run, and James Webb, and it's been a real exciting few years, I suppose. And now we have Dario Belandi and Robin Roos in a very interesting fight here. Like Belandi, one of those guys who is at 6'3", he's a big, strong guy for the division. At 7-1, he only lost to Will Curry back in 2020. He's been on an unbelievable 5-fight run since that, beating Mick Stanton last time out. And he comes in here, the pretty boy up against him. His first fight in Cage Warriors, but we know with Ian Dean, these lads who come in, we often see them right up at the very top, and it doesn't look like their first fight in Cage Warriors. He's won 5 of his last 6, and it's very, very interesting. I just think with Belandi, like how I described him. I remember the last time we were talking as a Dan Henderson style. You know, he just tries to hurt you at all times and land big shots in the inside and going for guillotines, and maybe not a Dan Henderson thing, but he even goes for go-go bladas the odd time as well, and very good takedowns. And even against Mick Santon last time out, you know, we've talked about many times at this stage, but does that kind of weird Kimura from the back sweep thing. He dealt very well with that, like, and you could see how prepared he was. And now, entering this fight, I was, you know, he usually wins a test of chins, but I'm not sure if he wants to do that here against Robert Roos, who's an unbelievable striker with that front leg high kick with the power, just insane power, so fast for a guy his size and so attacking as well. It's an interesting one, Brad, because maybe you could say, you know, obviously Roos is a very, very good striker predominantly, but Andy's more of a well-rounded type of fighter, though. But he does strike with most people, and he is happy. He's not like, you wouldn't call him a wrestle-first fighter. Now, he could wrestle first in many fights, but I think he's going to be one of those lads who was like, right, okay, this guy's a great striker. I'm going to show him what it's like undefeated. That could quickly change, no, because of how good Roos is. But it's an interesting potential matchup coming in, isn't it?
I mean, look, you know, you saw how well he'd obviously scouted Mick Stanton. He'd clearly put a lot of prep into that. And, you know, he'd seen Mick use that great transition against Will Curry so many times. He didn't make the same mistakes that Will made. And he was able to take the middleweight title. And, you know, Mick was, for me, on the run of his career at that point. So that's a big win. He's a super physical guy, whether it's grappling or whether it's just trying to bully people around the cage. You know, he's a big fella and he uses that size really well. I think Robin Roos equally physical, but more in a pure damage kind of sense. You know, I don't think Robin's going to be looking for any takedowns here. He's going to be coming out looking to get right in Belandi's face, looking to smash away at him, looking to use the elbows, bring that Muay Thai background to bear. It's his first fight in Cage Warriors, but he's coming in as the superior challenge middleweight champion himself. So, you know, this guy's got credentials. He's got a ton of experience in the ring, outside the cage. I'm really looking forward to this one. Again, it's another one of those primarily striker versus grappler kind of fights. I'm just really interested to see how these two guys stack up. Just two big physical dudes.
It's interesting with Roos as well, right? I think the meta game of mixed martial arts has changed a lot over the last while, where guys who are, let's take Alex Pereira for an example, right? Guys with unbelievable power like Roos has as well, they tend to be kind of more counter fighters and picking their shots and kind of waiting a little bit more. You know, you even see it with Adesanya, and you see with a lot of the, you know, very good Muay Thai or kickboxers. He's not that, though. He's an attacker. Like, he goes forward and looks for those big shots. Now, as you said, if Belandi decides to wrestle, maybe that opens him up for it. But at the same time, you only need one of those front leg high kicks, and the night is very, very different. And the takedowns going forward are very, very different as well. And just for Belandi as well, Brad, like, you win 5 fights in a row, you're the Cage Warriors champion, you just beat Mick Stanton. You're probably having in the back of your mind here, look, the Contender Series is starting back up again. You know, this division isn't, as I said, the best in the world. You could be straight into the UFC. I'm not sure if there's any middleweight fights even on the London card coming up. Maybe it's a bit quick to a 2-day turnover, but it's very, very, you know, you often see fighters getting to this stage of their career in Cage Warriors, and you know that they're kind of, at most, if they win, they'll 2 more fights in Cage Warriors. You know, it'll be hard to see him having any more. That's not, you know, that's not an easy mindset to enter fights like this with against a guy who's so dangerous, is it? It's a very interesting time for Belandi.
Yeah, I think you know that there is that pressure there because so many of our champions do tend to move on to the UFC reasonably quickly. And obviously there's the Contender Series now and an Ultimate Fighter as well. So it's not just necessarily waiting for the UFC to do like 1 or 2 European shows a year. There's various other ways that guys can get around there. So I think Belandi would be crazy if that wasn't, you know, somewhere in his mind, or even at the back of his mind for now. He's going to deal with Robin first, but surely that must be in a prize fighter's mind at this stage in their career. You know, he's got that record they like. He's you know, he's a young guy still. He's got the best years of his career ahead of him. I think with, you know, another spectacular submission here, or if he can go out and knock Robin Roos out, even better. You know, eyes are going to be on this card. There's going to be people from the UFC keeping a close eye on it. And, you know, we tend to find when we do a card on UFC week. There's a lot more people watching than usual, a lot more people interacting on social media. So all these guys on this Manchester card know the spotlight's there. And I think, for Belandi on such a great run, it's his to go out there and take. And for Robin Roos, you walk into another guy's backyard, knock him out, all of a sudden you're king of the hill.
And I think just the last thing on this fight as well, as you said, correct on the Roos part, but it feels like there's an extra prestige to defending your Cage Warriors belt and fighting a few more times as a champion in Cage Warriors. Because I feel like, as you said, people are doing it less and less now because they're getting signed. Like, you even see a guy like, Lonnie Kavanagh going to the UFC before he even gets in that mix. We saw it obviously with Reece McKee the first time, and it's happening. It's going to be happening more and more and more because, like,
the Luke Riley as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, like the UFC does not want to be giving up that talent, especially when I suppose the entry level to the UFC now is not as high, I suppose, as it used to be in terms of like you'd have to have 10, 15 fights before. Now there's lads with 6, 7 fights, less even, going in there, and the lads with Cage Warriors with 6, 7 fights are probably better than most in the world that way. So, but to that point, like the opposite of that, then if someone kind of stands out from that, gains that experience in Cage Warriors and has the titles, the title fights in Cage Warriors, they do stand out and they do look better. And then when they obviously move on and go to the UFC, which everyone is, Cage Warriors are happy with it. I'm sure they'd love to still have Ian Gary and Paddy Pimblett and everyone, but we know the reality of the situation. But that benefits Cage Warriors as well because the fighters are just going to look better and better. And I think it benefits as well the likes of Belandi to gain more experience, to have, let's say he does get to the UFC and you put him in there against some very good striker. Well, he can go back and look and say, well, I fought Robin Roos, and this guy is as talented as strikers you'll get anywhere, and he can kind of go back and think about that fight. So I think it's very, very interesting. But a good fight, and as I said, you probably have to favour Belandi going into it, but I don't think Roos is, how would you say, a live dog? I think our American friends
100%.
would say.
This definitely feels like a fight. I've not seen any odds for it yet, but it feels like the kind of fight where there will be a favorite and potentially some people are going to lose a lot of money because there's so many ways for both guys to win this fight. I'm expecting there to be a fair bit of action at the bookies.
Brad, I'm not sure which fight you think in Cage Warriors history is on paper coming into it the best matchup, because I feel like Mason Jones versus Michael Pagani might be up there. The ones that stick out to me are maybe Jordan Vucinic, Paul Hughes, and others down through the years. But this, I couldn't believe when I looked up this card this week that this fight was happening. I'm like, this is an unbelievable fight. Like, Pagani last time out, I could not have been more impressed by him. Everyone knows my affection for James Power as a fighter, and he's come back and done very, very well, obviously, since he lost to Pagani. But watching back that fight yesterday, God almighty, what a performance for Pagani. But even before that, he'd fought over in Bellator and other places, fought Joshua and Wardy. This guy is, just an absolute beast of a fighter altogether, really smooth, great striker, and very good defensively as well, and all around. And then Mason Jones, like, what a run he's been on since he went out of the UFC. I suppose took kind of that decision. I think it was up in the air at the time in terms of the contract. He probably could have, re-signed for the UFC, but he took the decision to go back to Cage Warriors. Has, fought regularly, fought twice last year. This is going to be a second fight again this year. Wouldn't be at all surprised if he got a third one in. And he's won all of those, beat Bryce Logan and Jan Lias in these last two, who are very, very good. Finished both of them. Finished Ribeiro as well. I'll be honest, Brad, I'm so excited about this fight. I think with Mason Jones, and I wonder if you agree with this, he's looked to me more relaxed in these last few fights. He looks, better defensively, and there was never a question about his ability or his toughness or anything like that. It was maybe just the experience levels. Even though, like, he's had a good few fights now, he's 17 fights into his career. I think he's looking better than ever in the last few, but this is an unbelievable fight. How would you see this one going? I have no idea how this is going to go. I just think it's going to be a very good technical matchup.
Sean, I don't know. I don't care. I just want to watch it. Just awesome. This is one of the ones in the office when we're talking about what's coming up. Everyone's just giddy for it. I completely agree with everything you said about Mason there. He's looked so relaxed. His last few fights been out in California. And, you've obviously got a lot of bureaucracy to deal with over there. So he's going to be fighting a bit closer to home again. be interesting to see how that plays a factor. But look, as calm and relaxed as he's looked, he's certainly not looked any less dangerous. The 3 wins that we've seen from him since he returned to Cage Warriors have all been very destructive. He's left guys laying or hurt them badly on every occasion. And, he's going up against a guy in Pajani who just looks like he's got it, right? He just looks like one of those guys when you're like, I can see this guy in the UFC in a few fights time. I can see this guy being, a real fan favorite early on. He's just got that style that people like to watch. I think this is a big fight for both these guys. If a guy like Mason loses to a guy like Pajani, you're kind of like, okay, well, where does he go now, kind of thing? Because he's kind of completed Cage Warriors in the sense that double champion. Is he going for Cage Warriors gold again, or is he looking to move on, go back to the UFC? And a loss at this time in his career, that's a big roadblock. Similarly, for a guy like Pajani, as you mentioned shortly ago, the barrier to entry for the UFC has come down a lot in recent years because of the Contender Series, because of the Ultimate Fighter, because there's more cards that they need more guys for, and they're always looking to expand where they're going. And a big scene in Italy at the moment, big grassroots movement. Pajani's got to be thinking, I could probably take a much easier fight than Mason Jones and get a couple more wins under the belt, and maybe go for the Cage Warriors title or a prize fighter or something. So for both these guys to shake hands on this, and I'm told they did so pretty quickly, just tells me that they both want it. These guys want to go and tear lumps out of each other and find out who the better man is. And what more can you ask for?
Well, but you think about Pajani, right? He fought James Power probably, before that fight, looked at as the best prospect maybe in Cage Warriors. Maybe afterwards, Pagani took that. Now he fights arguably the best fighter in Cage Warriors in his very, very next fight. The balls on that man, like, here's my prediction. I think if Pajani wins this fight, he'll be signed to UFC straight away. Sometimes things go over the UFC's head, more increasingly, I think, over the last while, but I don't think this will. And I think there's a bit of a benefit to, if you're looking at it from Pajani's side, when it's an ex-UFC fighter. I know that used to be a thing years ago, but we saw even when Kiefer Crosby beat Cowboy, he was signed straight away. There is that kind of, he beat someone who's UFC level. We've seen that obviously with Mason Jones. So this is a massive fight for Pajani. And, again, you mentioned the main event, there's going to be one favorite, and I think there's going to be some people losing their money. I could see that happening here, no doubt. I could see Mason Jones opening up as, a 3 or 4 to 1 favorite maybe, and I think that price will be way off. But the bookies aren't often wrong, so we'll see on that. But I'm just very interested to see. I love the fact that Mason's back at lightweight. I think he should always be lightweight. I know he's been fighting there, but I never liked that move up to welterweight. I just thought it added something that was unnecessary for him. But anyway, but I'm very interested to see who is the more relaxed, the smoother, the more technical, because I do think this will turn into a technical battle. Like a lot of time, fights we get really excited about are the ones that are, the Duluth Rileys, the ones that are going to be madness. But this one is, I feel like we're going to get 15 minutes of beautiful technique here, and sign me up for it, because this is, oh God, if you're listening to this and you don't watch much, maybe you just watch the UFC and maybe you're going to Cage or stuff, this is the one. I'm telling you, I cannot wait for this fight. We could talk about that fight all day, Brad, but let's move on. Ewan Davis against Adam Shelley is a very, very interesting fight as well, because you look at a guy like Adam Shelley and you think, what, I suppose, a recapturing of his career he's made over the last while. He lost those 2 of his first 4 fights to James Power, who we were just speaking about, and Kenny Makahana obviously as well. But to go on a 3-fight run since then is brilliant. But now that step up and level is coming again against Ewan Davis, who in his last fight beat Leon Hill, obviously, who's the teammate of Adam Shelley, and looked absolutely phenomenal altogether in that fight. Bit of added spice there, isn't it? Are we going to start calling Ewan Davis the KF killer if he wins this and all? We've had the SPG killer back in the day. It's interesting. No, that sort of storyline that could play out here, but this is a very interesting fight, Brad, isn't it? Like, 2 guys, again, who are probably not too far away from the title mix based on the runs that they're on at the moment.
Look, I think whenever you've got someone who's beaten your friend or your teammate, and you've got an opportunity to get that back, you're going to go for it. I mean, we talked last week about Aiden Steve and Alexander Loof. Aiden Steven got knocked out by Tobias Harila, who's Loof's teammate. That's another reason he wants the Loof fight, so he can get that win back. And I'm sure, it's probably not the number one priority for Adam Shelley, and I'm sure that's what the coaches are telling him, not to get too caught up in it. But you've got to want it. You've got to want to go and get that win back when someone's beating your mate. So yeah, very, very interested to see this one. Two guys I think match up really well. They're both long and tall for the division. Shelley obviously with a bit more experience overall. Certainly if you want to include what he's done outside of MMA. I know Yain Davis has had a little bit of time at the cage. He was wanting to fight earlier this year, and he had a couple fall through. I think originally he wanted to fight in Manchester, and then he was moved to a card in April, and had a couple of opponents fall through there. So a bit of a frustrating time for him. But he's got a great team around him, and I'm sure they're channeling that frustration into his training, into his preparation. So it's not a case of, oh no, I've been waiting and waiting to fight. It's a case of, look how much extra time I've had to prep for this. Look how much more of a fighter I can be, and look how much better of a show I can put on here for these fans. As we said, under that big spotlight, we've got two guys here who probably a few fights away from a Cage Warriors title or something like that. But if the UFC are going to do Manchester again this time next year, well, maybe they're looking like the guys that could be on that card, or maybe they're guys that could be looking at the Contender Series this time next year. So yeah, great prospects, great fight. Very much looking forward to it.
And that preparation you mentioned for Davis, so like watching that Leon Hill fight again, he's just a relentless fighter, really, isn't he? And he's like, I love seeing fighters like that are like, there's no airs or graces about them. They're happy to put in the work, and they're happy to grind you out of there. And like, you look at his record, four fights, 4 wins, 4 finishes, 4 first-round finishes as well, I believe. And he's the sort of guy, I think, who could have a few third-round finishes, because he wrecks people, but he does it early as well. I'd be interested, because Adam Shelley, he's been through it. All of his fights, none of his fights are finished in the first round. All either second round or third round or a decision, which in itself says something, that... and I love the two Shelley brothers, but all the guys in KF, you think and especially Shelley brothers, like they come from the taekwondo background, and you think they're going to be tough to deal with on the feet, but on the ground maybe you can get the best of them. But like, these lads are really good at stopping takedowns and in the clinch, and it's almost been a weapon for I think Ryan more so when he was on his good run, but I think Adam more so recently has been really, really good there. So they'll have learned a lot.
Camilleri last time out, who
Yes.
was obviously a very, very good wrestler, and I believe I'm correct in saying it's one of, if not the biggest height difference we've ever had in Cage Warriors. Matt obviously really short, which for a wrestler is perfect, because you're trying to get down low and get on the hips and underneath. So it was a really unique thing for Shelley to have to deal with. And I thought he dealt with it absolutely excellently. That was he's had a couple of tricky fights. El Hadjin Dai is really tricky on the feet, and then Camilleri is really tricky to deal with on the ground. And he keeps passing these tests and looking to pass them quite smoothly as well, which again, it's exactly what you want to see from guys at this level. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one.
The next one I want to talk about is Dylan Hazan, who's going in there against Elvis Oliveira. And Dylan Hazan, who was on an unbelievable run, 9 fights in a row, and then he comes up against Kalen Loughran and Amir Malinkpour, who obviously was supposed to fight in Manchester, but didn't. Watched a good bit of tape on him. An absolute beast, Kalen Loughran, an absolute beast as well. And it feels like this fight, with all due respect to Elvis, is maybe a bit of a layup for Dylan Hazan. Elvis comes forward and he throws his shots, but I think he's wide open to be hitting, especially a guy like Dylan, who is a very attacking fighter. But I think I wrote in my notes, maybe an unacknowledged madman. Maybe he doesn't get acknowledged enough. Like, he goes for calf slicers and he blasts lads out with ground and pound and everything like that. I think this is a favourable enough matchup for him, but like against a guy who's gonna throw hands, like Elvis Oliveira does. He's a few submissions on his record as well. Obviously, he's going to be good on the ground coming out of Nova and Yao. It's still a test, but one you'd expect for Hazan to come through and kind of get back on that road to where he was before again.
Yeah, I think I think it's completely fair to say this is a get right fight for Dylan. He obviously had that big loss against Kalen, in front of all his own fans. He was absolutely devastated after that. Especially considering the situation where Martin Yoni had stepped aside for him purely so he could have a crack at that belt, and then he didn't bring it home. And then to go out there last time against Malikpour and lose in a very, very surprising way, just made a mistake, which you cannot afford to make it against guys of Malikpour's level. I think there's some doubts creeping in for Dylan Hazan. He's obviously got the physical tools and the skill set to compete at a very high level, but he needs to get back. He needs to find that winning form that got him to the title shot in the first place. And I think you're not going to get a pushover in Cage Warriors, but I think this is a good fight for Dylan Hazan to maybe calm some of those nerves. He's going to be away from home. He's not going to have that crowd pressure. Something people might not know about Dylan is that he's got an absolutely massive fan base in Italy. So he's in with I don't know if it's the Rome football team, but he's in with one of the football teams over there. They have banners with his name on in the stadium when he fights. Like it's a big deal. He brings a lot of people with him, and he's got a lot of guys watching him, and that's huge pressure. That is however way you want to cut it, that's absolutely massive pressure. So maybe fighting away from home, getting that win under his belt, and then making another run towards the title, maybe it's just what he needs.
Run us through the rest of the card, Brad, and who we should be looking out for, because I know there's a lot of good prospects on this card as well, and it feels like, we talked about this time next year looking at the UFC Manchester card. I feel like the Cage Warriors Manchester card as well, we could see a lot of these lads back, maybe a few lads who are 3-0, 4-0, maybe being 10-0, this time next year. Who are a few of the people and a few of the matchups that you would tell people to have a look out for maybe on the undercard here?
Well, you've got the former champion Stefano Paterno. He's back in action against Oli Santalati in the welterweight division. I would imagine, the winner of this might be looking at the welterweight prize fighter in September. I know Paterno's already kind of made it clear that he does fancy that, and I'm sure Santalati does too. I think both of those guys will be very, very good in the tournament if they can come out of this unscathed and get back in there. Obviously, Adam Cullen's back on the main card. He's looking to bounce back. Lost a split decision last time out, so a big fight for Adam Cullen. Connor Wilson, one of the next gen guys, he's fighting Raz Bring. That should be loads of fun. In terms of hot prospects to keep an eye on, Teddy Stringer's back in action. For my money, one of the top English prospects in the sport at the moment. Training out in California with the MMA Fight Academy guys. Similar note, Fran Breen from Next Generation, one of Paddy Pimblett's teammates. He's 2-0. He put on an incredible performance last time out, and he's taken a step up in competition against Davide Scarano, who had a great fight with Lona Kavanagh last year, I believe it was. Yankee Hagen's back in action, the guy with 100% finish rate. He's taken on the unbeaten Harold Cohen. I could go on as long as you want, Sean. There's 22 fights on this card. So much good stuff coming up. Mariusz Mikulajewski, who got that crazy flying knee last time out. This is a guy with one-shot stopping power. And I know I think he's just 2-0 or 1-0 as a pro now. But he's kind of been making noise about that prize fight tournament as well. I don't know if a guy who's that novice is going to be put into the tournament, but I don't know. Maybe he wants to get on that card anyway, just in case the alternate gets injured and he can step in last minute.
Matteo Martinoni as well, the brother of the former champ, is on this as well, and he looked good in his opening couple of bouts. So yeah, lots of good prospects as well. And just the word before we leave it, Andy Clamp, is he going to get a replacement? It looks like there's something coming in. We obviously we're recording this a bit early, but hopefully the light heavyweight title will be up for grabs here as well.
Yeah, Andy Clamp will almost certainly be on the card. We've locked Ian Dean in the shed with a mobile phone and a laptop, and we're not letting him out until Andy Clamp's been matched. Bless him. Look, light heavyweight's difficult. You've got to have a guy who's, we're not just talking about another fight. It's going to be the main event, and it's for the title. It can't be just anyone. So I know Ian Dean's working really hard at the moment to get Andy a fight. But this isn't a top heavy card. This is a card with some real prospects on it. I forgot to mention Jack Axworthy's making his debut on this card. Another next generation guy. and a guy I would be very, very happy to stake my reputation on being a guy who you are going to hear a lot about over the next couple of years. These kids that are coming out next gen at the moment, just some absolute savages. So, if you're free early doors, get down and have a look at Jack Axworthy, Damon Donald as well. He's fighting Matteo Martignoni. He's a very, very good prospect. Yeah, a lot of fun stuff on this card. George Smith back in action as well. Obviously, fought for Cage Warriors a number of years ago. Had a heart condition, had to take some time away from fighting. I believe he had a surgery. Recently made a return on the regional scene, but great to see George back in Cage Warriors after overcoming those health issues. Fighting Christian Tebbit on this one, which will be a good. If you're a fan of the Northwest scene, it's one that's possibly been a long time coming. Both these guys been knocking around for a while, so yeah, looking forward to that one too.
Beautiful, Brad. Thank you very much for joining me. I can't wait for it. And as I said, the European International Fight Week headed to Manchester next week. So tune into that. UFC Fight Pass, July 25th. Come home from work, order the Chinese, get it on, get on the television, and we'll have a few good old fights to knock it down with. So we'll all be tuning in for that. Brad, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for joining me. We'll see you all next time.